this dentist is looking at the decay and going, oh, it's the food. Oh, they're not chewing their food anymore. That is such a narrow perspective. I'm just go, from a frequency standpoint, from a vitality, from a vibrancy standpoint, what these people lost, food, who cares? They lost their whole structure that held their morphogenetic field. Mm-hmm. What the hell? Mm-hmm. And we want to talk about the decay. Okay. Sounds like the whole airway world to me right now.
It does.
Oh, let's talk about the fact that we're not chewing.
Welcome back to the Village Sessions podcast.
Bringing wisdom home.
We're going to start out featuring some products.
Yeah.
Featuring some of our favorite products from Cosma. This is a woman named Stephanie who you guys probably, you may even already own these products.
Totally.
I mean, they've been around in the bioenergetic space for a long time. If you know who Ray Peat is, you probably know who Stephanie is. You probably know what this line is. And my favorite thing about Cosma is Stephanie. So she's the owner and creator, family-owned business. To no surprise, we love we love the family-owned
women
business
in
and
family industry. Yeah, the cottage.
I love the cottage industry.
And before she started creating skincare, her love first was learning about the body and physiology, bioenergetics, and then starting to create her products from there. And they've evolved over the years. She just actually updated her branding too, so we have like a whole fresh new look. And yeah, what are you holding right there?
The ghee balm.
Ghee?
Yeah, this is one of my favorites I do it morning and night, facially. You actually introduced me to this one specifically, but I was introduced to Cosma a year or so ago with the squalene oil.
Ooh.
It was Kua's first sunburn, that kind of whole situation. And you guys were all like, squalene.
Yes.
So we slathered him and it went away in like literally 12 hours.
I wonder if that's even on her website or if we were just experimenting, but maybe it is on the website now, how great it is for after sun care. I would love to just like run through our favorite products. I've been using these products for, I guess, maybe 4 years now, over 4 years, maybe 4.5 or 5 years.
Cool.
And hands down, the one that I make sure I have in a running line in stock is the cleanser, actually. I don't know if you guys have experienced trying to take, so like on a day like this where we're recording, we have a little bit of makeup on, and I've done like oil cleansing with the coconut oil, but I found that in the more like non-toxic holistic realm, if you put a cleanser, try out a cleanser, it's great ingredients, but it's not actually taking anything off your face. It's kind of like smearing it around.
Yeah, keeps it on there, smudges it around.
Yes, and she does like a chamomile, it's like a gel consistency. Fantastic cleanser, gets everything off without drying the skin out. It's very like microbiome friendly. So that's actually one of my favorite products, along with the balm. You love the balm.
Yes.
The tallow balm.
So I've been using these products for it's probably been almost 3 years,
Wow.
which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a long timer, so I'll try something and be like, oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
I come back to this one, and these products have they last and last and last.
Totally.
And so I love the tallow balm. I order them in bulk and keep them everywhere.
Nice.
In the beach bag, in the car, in the da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, love this one. And then I also like the tallow beauty oil. So I use that one. And then I love the tallow body oil as well. So these are two of my favorites.
Nice.
Shave your legs, hop out the shower.
Yep.
Put that on. The one that she has the pearl powder in with it's the age one. It's the new moon age defense, I believe is the name. I'm not holding it right now. I literally just ran out, so I don't have it right here. But she has pearl powder in there, and somehow it's dissolved.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with that one. But Molly and I were laughing about the fact that the tallow balm, I just have to make sure I keep my cap on tightly because Story will eat it.
Yeah.
Just
Literally bite marks in
inhale
my
and
stuff.
consume it.
Yeah.
So once again, we've got the purity, we've got the herbs in there, and the kids know that
Yeah,
the products
they're
are great.
Oh, is this food?
Yeah, 100%.
Basically.
And then you love the Milky Mask.
I actually really love the Milky Mask. I haven't had this for very long, maybe like a month or so. But I've been doing it like every 4 or 5 nights. So a couple times since I purchased it. I love it. And I do it with her pearl powder as well. I mix the two and then I put it on and keep it on for just a bit. And then I feel rejuvenated. I feel like so much collagenous things happening in my skin, you know, you just like feel bright and tighter, like your face feels tighter after you put that on. And I love it.
There is a tightening effect when the mask is on. So you almost feel like you're like, is my skin drying out? Because some masks can just like take all the moisture out of your
Yeah.
skin. And then you take it off and you're like, no, wait, it was just literally like lifting my skin.
Yes, that's how it feels.
It's
Nice.
phenomenal. I fly through the Milky Mask for sure. So yeah, if it's your first time or second time, or you're just like a recurrent customer, we have a code for you guys in the description box, and we'll link Stephanie's information too, because she's a great person to follow too, because she actually puts out educational content with sharing her products, and something I've really always appreciated about her. So that's our feature for today.
Yeah.
Wearing it, showing up in it,
Reading her
and
emails. Her emails are
yeah, you love her emails.
on point.
She puts out
Storytelling.
a newsletter.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me.
Did you
Yeah.
Did you just meow?
No. No.
She went.
And she wonders why
Story
Story.
from the back.
It was almost a story.
Why Story is feline?
Story would do like she'd be like
Meow.
meow.
No, she goes,
I was like,
meow.
she's
like,
just
meow.
meowed.
We should leave that in.
All right, we'll leave it in. Story. My daughter, instead of saying yes, she's like yes.
You just did that.
Every time you did, you go,
She's a cat.
okay.
So, anyways,
Awesome.
if any of you other people out there have cats as children, so anyways,
relate.
let's get into the episode.
I'm super excited about what we're going to get into. This is part 1 of 2, so we're doing a 2-part,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. The first part, well, basically the whole 2-part is going to be the biggest picture of lip and tongue tie.
The biggest.
Because
Like there's not one bigger.
Because if y'all know,
That's it.
if you were an OG listener to the episode, we did the bigger picture of
No,
tongue
we did
tie.
the big picture of lip and tongue tie.
Oh, we
Yes,
did the big
yes.
picture of. Okay, got it.
Yes, and so we wanted to drop in and really back up, right? Like as far as we can. I live out there,
Yep.
so
She stays
I'm
back.
That's where I'm home. Is way back there, out there, looking in. And we're going to do this in 2 parts. So the first part is I have been a Weston A. Price follower for many years. I've
yeah.
actually
Tried and true.
have you read the book? If you talk about it, have you read the book? And this book, first edition, Nourishing Traditions, look at the love
So much love.
in this book. There's so much love in this book. I'm talking about dog ears, back cover.
Oh yeah.
A little bit of brown.
Some type
on
of
the-
brown.
browning.
I'm sure there's food in here.
Does it smell good? Not from food.
Smells like a book.
but
It smells like an old
from
book.
that
Smells
old book
like
smell.
yeah. I mean, this is just Pima.
Nice.
I mean, this is legit right here. It's got notes in it, pieces of paper, well loved. And I wanted to talk about the very favorite part of Weston A. Price's work for himself was the nutritional piece. He kept coming back to the nutritional piece. Loved that part. And I wanted to give Kori a place here with the place that she holds in the lives of so many thousands of women as the person who's brought nutrition together, brought it home, in the home, in a new way, in a modern way, in an attainable way, in an achievable way. And all of the things that you've seen related to recovering the nutritional piece in the modern family, the modern woman. That's how I look at you. That's how I see you.
Love.
And then part 2 is going to be the focus on the craniofacial piece. So we're going to do 1 and 2. That's kind of how we're going to do it. Split it up. And I want to start with Kori, you talking about your work in the nutritional space, what you've seen over the last several years, what you've done that's unique from Weston A. Price's or Sally Fallon's work, we should say, in the cookbook. And also you're a Petey.
Petey.
And I love that. And just how you've kind of melded that together and brought it through. I'll say that for me, I discovered Nourishing Traditions in, gosh, I have to think about this. If this was 96, I had a vegan vegetarian pregnancy, my 3rd one, and was housebound for 2 years after the pregnancy. I was that depleted.
Wow.
And I had worked with a man named Sam Queen. Sam's transitioned now, but he worked in the mercury toxic space with early with the ZIFs, dental amalgam mercury syndrome, the DAMS people. They set up the original International Association of Oral Medicine Toxicology. Sam Queen did the original work with Hugh Reardon at the Reardon Clinic in Wichita, Kansas, of all places, around IV vitamin C. So Sam helped me with the mercury toxicity that I had from early in my marriage. And when Sam told me, he's like, this is what's going on, I was one of those cowboy people back in the day when you had to order the clean DMPS from China and all the supplies. I mixed my own bags because you didn't have drive up like IV vitamin C back in the day. And I started my own IVs, mixed my own bags, started my own IVs, and I ran my own IVs at home for years. When I found out all of that, and Sam was helping me. But one of the things that helped me the most as far as like bringing the food piece in was the Nourishing Traditions cookbook. So that began to bring me back to life. Took a couple of years, but we got there, right? And so this is what I had for years and years. I mean, even when I we built the house in Kansas and I had a wood burning stove in the kitchen. I mean, I was using her gingerbread recipe, and all of the things that I cooked in my wood stove in the kitchen.
Do you remember whenever she showed us the picture of her kitchen?
Oh, we got to see some
We got to
throwback,
see throwback pictures.
Like,
Yeah.
what camera was that taken on?
Oh, gosh. It had to be like an early Fuji or Pentax digital.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looked like your classic like Kodak film style. Anyways, we got to see a little look at what this kitchen looked like, and it's like
massive.
It's just the quintessential
huge fridges, kitchen, multiple sinks,
two full sinks, 2 regular full size refrigerators. I had 2 wall ovens, and I had a Waterford Stanley 800-pound cook stove in my kitchen. That was my
serious.
version of dual fuel.
Serious.
I was not playing. So nutrition was such a big part of our lives, even before that, because I was a good vegan. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was top notch everything. It was killing me, but I was
everything else
top notch. She was good. But then, when the recovery started happening, I mean, I was flying in salmon from Alaska. We were doing, organic grass-fed beef. I had a freezer for the salmon. I had a freezer for the beef. I mean, it was, and I met the co-op truck once a month for all the other things. I think we graded, 5 pounds of raw cheese a month. And
wow.
we were a force to be reckoned with, when it came to that. Plus the garden, plus the eggs. We had our own chickens, the whole thing. So that was a really, really, really big part of our existence on our little farmette,
Wow.
And so that was like a glimpse into what it looked like to live this world. I mean, there was always grain soaking. There was always something souring or fermenting or something, The honey came from the bee person down the street, the raw milk, the blah, blah, blah. This was in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. And so then I meet Kori, and I'm like, oh, she's doing it. And she's doing it in this modern, really cool way, And then, of course, we worked together before you put your course together online. And that moment when I looked at you and I said, why are you doing it this way? And then you came up with your course, and a few months later you launched. And then that was kind of like history, right? That was it. So talk to us about the fusion, if you will, from even this to what you learned about peat to where you are now, and what you're seeing in the nutrition space, because he talks about nutrition, right? And he talks about being local with it.
Totally.
Talks about people and the way that they were eating before colonization, before modernization and civilization, right? So what have you learned? What have you found out?
Well, so to reference, Ray Peat and Weston A. Price in their similarities is both men were incredibly interested in taking a step back and observing. And they had a keen sense of observing patterns and seeing what was working for people, in certain contexts. Weston A. Price, of course, was a dentist, and then Ray Peat was a biologist. And so their context for how they saw the body had, that was kind of their framework. And Weston A. Price I was familiar with, and I think I was delving more into kind of the paleo realm in more of a Weston A. Price way prior to discovering Ray Peat, and really just experiencing a deep resonance would be the way I would describe the first time I saw his work, because he takes such a, he has since passed, and he took such a beautiful way of providing suggestions for people about biology and physiology, and then really handing people the tools to have their own sovereign experience of bio-individuality. And so he educated people on systems and basically how the body works. But his particular interest, and it's funny that even the word degeneration, because that was very much in the peat realm too, is like, what creates regeneration in the body? You love these terms too. You're like
Generative.
100%. Yeah. You guys created a course, generative habits. Like you and your belief system about the body is that it is always changing, always transmuting. So what can we create as a context, as a container for the body to be able to regenerate? And then what might create degeneration? And so those are kind of the similarities between them, in which case you actually could probably have like two plates of food that are very much like Weston A. Price and very Ray Peat, and they might look super similar. And I think the bio-individuality is where Ray Peat really stood out with the context of when and how, there's like he saw a framework of basically he took things down to the cell. So it was like, what creates ATP? Mm-hmm. What is the process of cellular respiration? Mitochondria. It was very sciencey, and I felt very activated by that. And so then when you take it down to the foundations, of a cell, and then studying the body with, okay, what does the body actually prefer here? And what would it look like to feed the body in a way that the body prefers to be fed in order to create the most ATP, was his particular interest. And then female physiology was something that he just completely excelled in. And so something I find interesting in your story, because this is just so classic, where maybe you're experimenting and you were obviously drawn into the vegan diet for a reason. Like you were like, actually, what was that at the time?
Yeah, I had a midwife that was very persuasive, in the subtle way. And me being, that classic foundational experimenter was like, I'll try it.
Totally.
Could have not been probably the worst decision that I've made in a really long, long time, because of the mercury toxicity. I just had it. I had nowhere to go with it. The protein was just not present in the abundance that I needed, or the right types of fats. So my already stressed metabolism with trying to create enough redox potential to detox was just breaking down by I have photographs of me probably a year after my third born was born, and I literally looked translucent.
Wow.
Yeah.
The vitality.
Yeah,
Was
just translucent.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so small, so emaciated, and just looked translucent.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, the example in your story of you experimenting with something and then probably feeling great for a while until pregnancy, birth, the process of you need more resourcing in that realm. This is usually when a lot of people on their journeys find themselves in any context. They're like, I felt so great, and I,
Until I didn't.
until I didn't, and they're like, why am I not feeling great
And
anymore?
a lot of times it's the perception of the abruptness, but it's actually happening way before. It's just you're a great compensator. So you're
Totally.
compensating, and then bam, you're just crashed.
100%. And this was something that Ray Peat, and when I say Ray Peat, bigger context would be the bioenergetic health space. Lots of wonderful leaders in that health space that I really resonate with. Ray Peat would be one that I just kind of go back to a lot and read his material. And he was so generous with the way that he published it and made it accessible for the world. And his primary education for people was understanding what creates stress. And and this also might be like Kate Deering's definition. She wrote a book called How to Heal Your Metabolism. Great book. She would call it, when your energy demands are more than what your body is able to handle. And so then it's like the tipping point, and there already was a process of degeneration prior to that point. And so, just connecting the points of the physiological pieces, and especially so when we look at Ray Peat and Weston A. Price, where they might have, where Ray Peat might have offered a different kind of perspective is it probably in the realm of, a couple different things. One, polyunsaturated fatty acids, which I think Weston A. Price, I don't think that Sally found it in that book really recommend a lot of like a ton of nuts and seeds or like polyunsaturated fatty acids. There's a focus on animal fats and full fat dairy and a lot of saturated fats.
I don't know about recommendation, but I know like she made a lot of recommendations for how to put them in. Like, for example, like I'm laughing because I'm just last week my whole thing was soaking and drying nuts, right?
And almost every time we come up here, you have something soaking.
Yeah, my sons still love them. And so they're like, Mom, they're in they're one's close to 30, the other's, like mid-20s. And they're like, Mom. And I think even last time we were recording, I had a bowl of soaking pecans and dried them in the oven and with some sea salt. And
Beautiful.
that's the way they get consumed in my house. I have pumpkin seeds, almonds, all the nuts get that, except walnuts.
And you prepare them in context of how they could be eaten for the best assimilation, best digestion.
Yeah, so you're not, the phytic acid's neutralized and you're not stripping minerals through the gut.
Totally. And so where Ray Peat comes through and really puts a focus on the saturated fats and educates with the polyunsaturated, the full spectrum from polyunsaturated all the way to the saturated, is in context of physiology and function in the body, and then particularly the thyroid being this kind of master conductor of the metabolism, and then metabolism being something where you can kind of even mark out where you might start to see degeneration as people start to get older, which is now happening so much quicker. We as a society stopped being able to process carbs only in the last few decades, not being able to handle them or gain a lot of weight whenever you're eating them. And so he was really curious about that, and also watched the political nutrition take place, in which case he watched the implementation of the seed oils and the vegetable oils to fatten up the cows to be able to mass produce cheaply, and looking at big food, looking at, once again, where the money is really going and flowing. That was always a context that he looked at as well. And so maybe that might be one differentiating piece is he educates on maybe the choice of implementing something like saturated fats, maybe reducing or minimizing polyunsaturated fats to be able to better utilize carbs. And so the more your thyroid is online, the more your metabolism is online, the more you're actually able to utilize carbs for energy. And so he's more interested in the realm of like, how do you create, utilize and maintain energy? Michele's motto is like, how do you create, utilize, and maintain space? And so he was so particularly interested in energy and then what creates the best foundation for us to create the most energy in the body and therefore create the most ATP. And so, saturated fats, but being able to like digest carbs again. So that looks very different at the beginning journey of one person over here and one person over here. And being able to bio-individually take context of their own physiology and then make the changes that feel resonate for them in order to get their metabolism back online is kind of repeats thing, and something that I was so inspired by. And so I had my own experience with it first for a few years and literally one by one just kind of educated myself on his suggestions of physiology and then made changes that felt really intuitive for me. And I've always been very interested in the metabolism and what creates a sustainable life. Did I ever tell you about my bodybuilding experience?
What? I don't think we've heard
Y'all
about
are going to
this.
be rethinking me right now. But
Wait, was this in Texas?
yes, it was my early 20s. I was just like in the fitness and bodybuilding world back then. And this just paints you a nice little picture of what sustainability might look like for me. In the world of bodybuilding, basically there's like a way you do it. You hire a coach, you go compete, you bring your calories down to like 1,200, 1,300, get into a state of,
you drop fat, you go lean.
you drop fat, you do a whole bunch of cardio. And I was like, I just want to enter into a competition with no coach myself, barely drop my calories below 2,000, barely implement any cardio, and just see if I can go medal. I just want to go see. And I did. I entered it into the biggest Texas bodybuilding competition in, I don't know what year that was, maybe 2015, just to like,
I think you've showed us a picture.
maybe
now I'm recalling
maybe Kyle
this.
showed you a picture.
I think he
Sounds
did.
like there's going to be a story on that,
Yeah.
you guys.
Yep.
Oh, those pictures
Kyle,
are
you can put it on your Instagram.
Those
Please
pictures
put it on
are
your
forever
story.
private.
Well,
I've seen it.
that's what I thought. You know, their privacy's a real relative thing anymore. I mean, especially if you know Molly, because she'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
Yep.
100%. And so, just the experience of like, I can see how the fitness industry and the bodybuilding industry is just driving women, especially, to the ground. You lose your period, you lose your cycle, you're sick all the time. And so even back then, years and years and years ago, I was noticing the unsustainable trajectory of where certain dietary practices were going. And that's why I went and had an experience in another way just to see if I could do it. And sure enough, I was able to do it. And I'm like, okay, there are other ways we can live life. I've applied this to motherhood. I've applied this to reversing endometriosis. Just like, is there a more sustainable way of living? Is there a more sustainable way that we can create, vitality in our bodies and show up as our fullest version of ourselves? And so basically in the creation of Freely Rooted, so I met Michelle when I was working with women one-on-one, and I've been working with women one-on-one for years, which created such a nice case study in a way of being
it gave you evidence procedure,
Oh,
and
totally.
you got to work with your concepts, and you had proof of concept at that point.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And also getting a gauge on collectively at the time when diet culture was more a thing, where are women at? Where even if you're not intentionally dieting, where have we as, a collective, what might be what we have thought was enough or too much to eat, And so that actually looked a little bit different 10 years ago. I think now women give themselves permission to eat and experiment with food. And really women just want to feel, and especially mothers, they just want to feel vibrant and fully themselves. And so by the time that I came out with my course, I was a mother myself at that point. And that was my goal and purpose, both having reversed a, chronic disease, and then also just being able to feel what it feels like to feel vital in my body. And so the course came out in 2020, I believe. Yes, coming up on 4 years. And yeah, basically gave a blueprint framework for people to be able to take and apply to their own lives and create their own individual lifestyle that gets their metabolisms back online. And so the full spectrum of what you might expect to see and what women were able to experience is everything that their metabolism pours into. And so this was something else that I really appreciated about people like Repeat, Kate Deering, is kind of coming up with biomarkers, in which case where people might have outsourced, am I healthy outside of themselves? They're able to self-attune to what that looks like. Also, Dr. Broda Barnes came up with the temps and pulses to measure your thyroid, your metabolism. And so these are all things that I've integrated into the course, and give credit where it's due with these teachers who have really inspired me over the years. And then of course my own experience working with women. And yeah, just the metabolism is the life force and master conductor of all of your entire processes as a human. And so that's going to impact digestion and sleep and sex hormones and your quality of life and
fertility
and
tooth decay,
I was going to say, yeah, and going into even just like child development, growth development.
bone
Totally.
quality, skin quality,
Totally.
all the qualities that are not necessarily quantifiable. They're more become your count, the sum total of your countenance and your vibration
essence.
and your essence and all of those things. Yeah.
the whites of your eyes and the
All
sparkle
that.
that you have. And
Yeah.
that was also something I was looking at, just the fruit of these leaders in the metabolic health realm. Just witnessing them was just like, these people were just so sharp, like incredibly sharp and vital. And I wanted to learn more. Like I just was, they drew me in. And so, yeah, I've had, over maybe 6,000, 7,000 women come through my Freely Rooted space and have an experience with it, and been able to literally come online again. And this is actually why there was so much resonance in, and why I was so activated by your work, because you help identify blocks of how women get in their own way in life, and developmentally, energetically, spiritually, like whatever that looks like. And you, especially if you work with you as a mentor, you can help calibrate and teach people how to self-calibrate. And basically that is what I set out to do with nutrition and lifestyle with women, is identify all the areas in which case they feel like they're living at a deficit in life, and go do the thing that you really are here to do. And so it's been amazing to watch the fruit of women feeling fully online. And then what do you know? They go start a business, or they go start crafting. They're getting their creativity online. They have children. They're able to get pregnant. It's just watching women do the thing they've always been designed to do, and watch them in their full, beautiful essence has been probably my favorite part of being in the space.
What I think is so interesting is when you look at the timeline perspective. So you've got Weston A. Price, who, this was in the 30s, right? 20s and 30s. I think this was published in 38, right? 38. Okay. I'm a real layered person. So you look at his story, which is also has a health piece to it. His own story has a health piece to it. And he recovered, went to dental school, traveled. So now he's got this lens, right? This is after the Flexner report. This is when we finally are like in the petro-based allopathic, that capitalistic endeavor is going to heal the world kind of thing, right? Or maybe, who knows? But that was the sell, right? And he's also got this very modern, civilized program that he's experienced and runs. So even in the writing, he's traveling around and he's looking at what the savages, they call them savages. So First Peoples, indigenous peoples, were called savages by the authors, even the people that did the foreword. I'm telling you, if you haven't read it, you just need to read it.
It shows so much about the time when it was
so
written.
telling. And so I'm like, Okay, so we've got that going on, the imperialistic attitude of the allopathic system. We've got that. Then we've got politics of the day. This is pre-World War One, or around when World War One's about to brew.
So pre-industrial age.
Okay.
Or right in there.
Industrial would have been like the beginning of the 1900s, into the 1800s, right? So now we've got almost World War One. Also, we've got the push by different religious systems into First Peoples areas. They want the land, they want the resources, all of that. So you've also got the people that they're looking at affected by colonization. They didn't just, the white man didn't just show up and bring food. The white man showed up and took their language away, took them off their land, put shoes on them and sent them to work in factories, right? It wasn't just showed up with nutritionally deficient food. There was a lot of other stuff going on, right? We'll get into more of that in part 2. However, I want to point that out because we've got peoples that lived relatively, we'll call it in peace and isolated to a certain extent with the culture of their heritage.
You could say intact.
Intact, yeah.
Everything's
so
still
they're
together.
intact. They're connected to the land. They're connected to their God, their system, their
people.
spiritual system, each other, right? And they're nourishing themselves from the land through a system that was put in place by their ancestors, right? So we get up to this point where all this other stuff's going down in the world, and that intactness, they're coming apart at the seams, right? And but this dentist is looking at the decay and going, oh, it's the food. Oh, they're not chewing their food anymore. That is such a narrow perspective. I just can't, I'm just going, from a frequency standpoint, from a vitality, from a vibrancy standpoint, what these people lost, food, who cares? They lost their whole structure that held their morphogenetic field. What the hell? And we want to talk about the decay. Okay. Sounds like the whole airway world to me right now.
It does.
Oh, let's talk about the fact that we're not chewing. So, and then we come along and we've got the modern agrarian United States, North America, Canada, all that. Then we move into, and we talked about that in our pregame today, that was still very much intact even in the Midwest until the 90s, right? And then I'm living in the Midwest in the 90s, which is hard to believe. As a throwback, we're picking fruit in orchards. I've got a commercial dehydrator. I'm cooking on wood. We're doing this and this. I'm still I'm old school in it, right? People are dropping off duck and deer, and we're processing it and doing the whole thing. Happy as I can be about that, right? Because that was one of the only ways I love my kids. You know what I'm saying? It was like, that was a big deal. It was a big part of our life.
That was a sign of a vitality and wealth and like your compassion for who you're going to raise and how they're going to be in the world.
Absolutely. And so there's a few people at that time who are beginning to do they're not going to buy in all the way to that, to the luxury or the status or the whatever when it comes to food. They're still they're trying to be traditional, kind of rootsy and purist with it. We're using nourishing traditions, that kind of thing. Everything's cooked from scratch. We're, kind of dug in. And then, so my oldest is 31, my youngest is 23. And so they were spoiled, rotten foodies. My boys were even like, thank you, Mom, you've ruined us, because now we know what this is like and we really don't want anything else. So there's a, even within some of my children, there's still this call back to the land. It's like somehow they're still trying to keep this alive, this kind of going, right? Because they know how they feel in their bodies. It's an anchor now to vitality, right?
Totally.
And then you're coming along in 2015 and you're like, oh, I wonder if we could do this differently and get a different result because the systems right? You don't just know what to do, you understand the system, which is the key. It's like if you're willing to learn the foundational systems, how things work, and then be your own N equals 1, your own research experiment, then you can figure out a lot of things, right?
100%. It even, I mean, just the ping that comes through for me right now is, even with like the bodybuilding example, it's the belief system that you can have a robust and wonderfully functioning body, and then therefore what would it create to actually support it this way versus just like drag it to the ground, and how much that context for how you've raised your children as an anchor for this is how you can feel. This is how you can feel. And then they keep coming back to it because they're like, they may have had experiences with other things, and yet they know the anchor of what creates vitality in them.
I love that you're using this as an anchor, though, vitality as an anchor, because it does represent some type of consciousness level, and the fact that someone's going to take, say, for example, someone takes food, a diet, a restriction, what's happening in the outer context, what's happening in their internal world, what's happening in their spiritual world, all of that comes together for us. And that's like the foundational piece. It's all moving at the same rate at the same time.
Yeah.
So as you nourish, expand, grow, change, so does the greater.
Right. Everything. I recently was working with someone who was stuck and circling and cycling. And I'm like, okay, we've been through this. We're going back through it again. We're going to do it again. What is happening with and for this person? And then it dawned on me. I'm like, you've had a cholecystectomy. You had your gallbladder removed. How much ox bile are you taking? Because I'm thinking, this is a fat story. Why isn't her fat coming on and creating the sterile ring to become the hormone that's going to level her out?
Wow.
And I started asking questions, and I said, you need to quadruple that amount. And then within 3 weeks,
You also have done this with a mentee that was in the Midwest and like having a whole bunch of drains, not able to eat gluten,
Right.
etc. And then a couple switches.
right.
And then she's
Yeah.
fully in freedom with food. Her relationship has changed. Her vitality has changed. Her child radically changed. Their marriage changing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like it doesn't go, food is a symbolic piece of the story.
Right.
It's not the story, and it's also representative of where you are
Right.
100%.
in your process.
100%.
So knowing the systems, like degree in nursing, I was laughing one day because someone had ranked the degrees, so different degrees in difficulty, and nursing was like one of the most difficult degrees. I mean, it's above astrophysicists. I was like, come on.
Whoa.
I know. I was like, okay.
Interesting though, nursing is there's so many categories.
so much there.
So much information to consume depending
so
on
much
where
there.
you go with nursing.
Fortunately, my foundational piece, I love anatomy, physiology, the biochemistry piece, the application piece. I love all of those pieces. So for me, when somebody is against the wall and nothing's moving, the questions come in, and I'm able to workshop it and be like, okay, wait a minute. You've had this surgery. This is gone. This is, okay, this is the foundational, what kind of support you need to let's get this moving in the right direction. And that comes pretty easily for me, unless it's me. And then,
Sometimes we can't see our own.
we
all
cannot
good.
see it at all.
all good.
It's okay. But, it's like, but that's also good too, right? Because then I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, this does work both ways. It's all good, and I got it. Thank you, and we're going to move on, right? Yeah. So anyway, where I was tracking with that was in the timeline, the importance of the way we do it changes, and yet the importance remains the same. It's still very critical and important to honor our physiology. We're not human yet. There's still ways that the body works that require certain things and in certain ways, and has to happen in certain ways in order to get vitality, energetic output, all of those things, libido, hormones, fertility, da 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 da. And when you're honoring that as a foundational aspect, then you get the thing that you want. You get your outcome.
Yes.
In context.
Yes.
In context with your environment too.
Right.
So all those pieces are crucial.
And then thankfully, other people that have come along in the last 15 years, Jack Cruz, they talk about light, the light water magnetism piece, all of that is very much, if we dial it all the way back to living in communities as savages, feet on the ground, eyes in the sun, body in the sun, acclimating to the seasons, moving in nature the way that we're required to in order to
And
thrive.
just being in the vibration, like
Yes.
the chanting, the praying, being in resonance with the people that are around you. Having that so tight knit
Right.
creates a different outcome.
Yes, every time. So as we move forward in time, and then your works come along, and the work of others who have done well, obviously you've given credit to articulating these concepts, and we've seen this so many times. People make it so cerebral and informational, and then the application goes by the side. The experimentation and the self-discovery about the true N equals 1 does not happen, and then the outcome is not gotten.
Totally. Was that a question?
No, I'm making a statement, but also I'm sure my next question, if anything, was going to be the flip between we take it in as information and then we apply it and do it, between the thinking and the doing.
Totally. Curiosity is a big piece and principle that comes in. Even when, Molly, you were talking about the symbolism of like food or restricting food or cutting out, how that is reflected in the consciousness as well. Like how we do one thing is how we do everything is what Michelle says a lot. I mean, we're sitting here drinking Mexican
Cheers.
Cokes right now. There's actually
We
this
said
is
we
an
said
ode
we
to,
would.
yeah,
We said we would. That's
this is
fine.
an ode to Ray Peat actually, because this is kind of one of his iconic drinks.
They're repping hard with the Coke bottle. I've got Waterford and Nugget Ice.
Nice,
so,
nice. Well, even with the context, okay, so like this was, growing up, soda was, oh my gosh, like absolute no rule, lots of rules. Maybe not even necessarily for my family, but culturally, it's like, this is bad, this is good. We had our understanding of good and bad, right, wrong. And so even one thing that, a huge thing that Ray Peat did was talk about authoritarianism and the rules of right and wrong. And maybe everything is not as it seems. And what would it look like to be curious and have an experience with something? And so I think it really does something in the field when these leaders go forth and have their experience first. And then it kind of informs the field for what that might be able to look like. And yeah, so anyways, his thing with sugar, like is sugar evil? Is it the devil? Is it like we put like crazy meaning to food, like actual like spiritual meaning to food sometimes, and in the realm of
morality too.
Morality, we put morality to food. And so his whole thing with what Michelle was saying earlier about understand the context, understand the systems. He's like, what might it require for your body to be able to process sugar? Because fruit juices, sugarcane, we've had access to these for as long as humans have been around. And he especially spent a lot of time in Mexico where produce was just abundant, sugar was just abundant. And so what might, like I said, like what might that require for you to be able to create a system where the human is meant to, experience life, experience food. And so I think that is only felt through the real life experience, and the curiosity came first for me, for sure. And I don't know if you guys would say the same with bringing it from the cerebral to the experiential body piece.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I didn't have growing up, not as many lessons in the nutritional realm. I didn't feel like that was like restricted or bad, or it was just kind of there. There wasn't like as much morality surrounding it. But something that I've learned working with Michelle and listening to Jack Cruz and the exploration, even in preparing for our generative biohabits course, is bringing in these concepts of ancestral foods and foods that resonate on like a cellular level with your body. And so for me, like more of that, bringing more of that in has been my like food experiment. It's like, what are the things that are going to nourish me from a lineage standpoint, from a rootsy standpoint, right?
Yes.
So instead of just saying like, I'm gonna eat a raw carrot salad, or I'm not gonna add sugar into XYZ, it's like, oh, okay, how can I actually experiment with like root vegetables and fermentation and canning something, even though I live in a place that's like relatively warm. Obviously, we've talked about this in the generative biohabits course, but the Maui, for example, has so many microclimates, right? So Michelle's up here on this mountain, which is, it feels like Scotland or it feels like Ireland. It has a different feeling than where you would be like down by the beach, maybe close to the water in a desert zone. And then where we're living currently is like in the forest, in a meadow by a stream, and it like gets cool in the winter. So it's like I've been having more fun with the experimentation process of adding in like, what are my ancestors eating? And then I married somebody from the Philippines and from here in Hawaii. Like that's where his ancestry is from. It's like they eat a lot of like really interesting vegetables that we've experimented with. And oftentimes I'm like, that's not really for me. Or if anybody knows anything about the Philippines and how much they eat blood meat, I'm like, oh God, like that just, it throws me over. And at the same time, I watch him and my son do it.
She just shimmied.
And
okay.
they're down for it. They're down for it.
Full body. Woo.
Yeah, you need to come to one of these birthday parties. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I'll take videos next time. But that's my experimentation. I feel like that's been a fun process in the nutritional space for me.
I think that's a really, is it okay we talk about Sam?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Can we talk about Sam? Hey, Sam.
Hey, babe.
So what was interesting is like this deeper knowledge space of metabolic anomalies, if you will. I know it has been a real focus in the lip and tongue tie world, especially with MTHFR, which is really fascinating because I've in school and my my work around the craniofacial field and wisdom systems, basically noetic science, consciousness, gnosis, how we know, and things like that. Which also I got a little bit of a zing reading the last, I think it was the final forward to, which one was it? One of the forwards in here, I can't remember if it was the last one or the one before the last one, but the gentleman talks about how he really didn't feel like the savages were wise because they kept choosing the foods that weren't for them. And I'm like, ooh, I felt like you missed it, because what was actually happening was not just about, oh, we could go over here and have what Auntie's cooking, or we can go to town and have this. There was so many other layers of what was happening at the same time. We don't know that that's the whole story, right? So back to metabolic anomalies or metabolic compensations, whatever you want to call it, in how the human is evolving is so fascinating, because I've seen this several times where someone comes to me and they're like, they've got something that looks like staph and they've been treated for staph. And I'm like, that's not staph. That's actually a fatty acid, blah, blah, blah. And you need this, this, and this. And you're probably going to have to always take this and this, then this, because in your pathway, you don't have a conversion, that does that. And we saw that with Sam. And how many years? 3 years he had been treated for that?
Oh, it was closer to like 10.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know. It was pretty gnarly.
Okay, so, but it was
in the hand, and then there was like multiple antibiotics taken for a series of years. And the last like 4 or 5 years was just topical antibiotics.
right.
But he went through that whole process, and he hasn't, for almost an entire year, he hasn't had
Right.
any supplements or anything, and
Good.
no breakouts.
Good.
So it was a stabilizing thing, I think.
It was also gains and drains.
Gains and
right?
drains,
So it's
100%.
calculating the gains and drains.
Yeah,
So
in
what I-
context, there's so much that has changed
right.
too in our
So
lives.
much has changed,
Yes.
yeah. So with that, what's so interesting to me is that there is, with support, like specific support, the body can either heal, regulate. The thing that you thought it was, it doesn't have to be that, right? And this is where, the conversation about MTHFR and tongue tie, it is so limiting because I feel like most of the conversations in airway dentistry are all very limiting because it doesn't follow all the way through to the whole being and the whole person. And I feel like when you back up and you dial in what's correct for that family, that child, that unit, and then place them in context, which is the ecology. And one of the forwards they did talk about ecology, and Weston A. Price actually talked about the ecology, the relationship between the being and the environment. But it never came out as the full look at the ecology. It was only about the nutrition, right? And so that's where I get a little disappointed in, okay, well, how do we like line all that up? And I feel like that's what happened with my work over the craniofacial space in the last, 11 years or so, is I finally was able to put this big enough picture together where someone could step in, create their own experience, look for the quick feedback loops, and then put together something that actually creates the vitality that you're looking for in that. And so where I was going with that was when the processes are known, the anomalies are also known, the environment's supported, the person, the individual is supported, and the feedback loop for vitality is evident, then you're able to finally get somewhere that you weren't before. And you're not just doing what someone told you to do. Because I feel like for me, I went through and I said, this is the way the cookbook says to do it. Yes. And so I did it that way. But you don't operate that way. You go through metabolic markers, you look at other things, and then it all comes together in the scales and in the balance and in the homeostasis of the evidence of metabolism is healing, and it's all coming together.
100%. And actually, we were just chatting about this in our pre-recording meal, is that if somebody says, I eat Weston A. Price, everyone's pretty clear on exactly what that means, what that could look like, what foods that includes, what foods that might not include. And then you go into Ray Peat's realm, and it's kind of an initiation for people to, one of my favorite things to hear reflected back is for somebody to go through my course once or several times, but in their first process, and then go back through a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and go, sorry, what course is this? This is not the same course that I took a year ago, because a year ago they were like, okay, what are the rules? I'm going to go through and follow the rules when there aren't
cerebrally.
Yes.
I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in and do all the things.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to pay attention to how my body's responding just yet. I'm just going to do the things.
Exactly. And then each time on their developmental journey, and maybe some of those, actually a lot of times, those steps that they are moving towards are at least getting them more resourcefully online to be able to cognitively have capacity to go through the second time and go, wait, I have a whole new piece of awareness now, and now I'm going to do it this way, and now I'm going to do this way and this way. And so that's the kind of funny thing about Ray Peat is if you go listen to an interview of his and you're like, so Ray Peat, what's the Ray Peat diet? He'd probably be like, what is that? What is that?
What are you talking about?
I teach about biology, and I make suggestions about, what supports metabolic processes, and that's going to look different in every season depending on your metabolism at that time, where you're located, what you have access to, and it's really beautiful to have an experience with. And so I think this is such a great picture and very indicative of how we process information cerebrally in the West, in the modern day. And this is why we love talking about, and this is Michele's language, taking the ancient and modern and merging the two, because Weston A. Price, went on his travels, and we received in the West, and then he was particularly activated, of course, by nutrition, but it's like, okay, tooth decay or collapse or cranial development, it's food, it's the diet. And we did the same thing with the blue zones as a culture in America, where we were talking about this the other day. In the blue zones, how we received it cerebrally is, oh my gosh, it's about the food. And also everybody's vegan. And this is how I understood
I'm
the blue zones
sorry.
at the time.
But that was really, really, really hard to watch.
Did you watch all that
Yes, I did.
transpire over time? Well, that's literally what I thought the blue zones was because a lot of women in my freely rooted space too, they were like, I'm coming here from blue zone understanding. And what about the blue zones, guys? And I have loved witnessing people who have actually traveled there themselves. You had an experience,
Yes.
people who actually go to these blue zone
Yes.
locations themselves, and they're like,
That's
sorry,
not how it's going down here, folks.
diet has so little to do with anything. And also, where are the vegans? Like what, like
They're
what-
not here. They're not.
and having an actual body experience, felt experience. And yeah, so you went to, where was the blue zone you went to?
I went to
Sardinia.
I went to Scotland, of course, and then I went to northern Spain. So I was from the Pyrenees to Finisterre. So I walked the Saint Francis route of the Camino de Santiago, right? And so I've also been Barcelona, Palma, and the Mediterranean, right, in France, and then spent, quite a bit of time in Mexico as well.
Well, it's interesting to note also that with the Blue Zone project or whatever, they're talking about length of life too, right?
Yes.
That's like
Longevity.
Longevity was like a big pillar for
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And when we were in Singapore recently, I had like told you guys the impact it had on me to see all of these elderly people within a community, within each little, like the Irish community, the Scottish community, the all these different places, and all the old people there cooking and making the food, but they're all within these little mess halls, like these little food halls. And I feel like that's left out of the Blue Zone. It's like, yes, people lived longer, but they were together.
Right.
And they were intact. It was intact.
Intact.
Everyone's together. Everyone's in resonance with each other. They're having fun. They're making meals. They're, regardless of what the food is.
Yeah.
They walked
They walk.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, that was like a huge piece with the people that I heard that had an experience.
Quality of life.
Quality of
Lower
life,
stress.
so rich and communally focused, which really brings back to the whole Mile Wild principle that we license in rooted families. And this is your art. This is your like legacy, is being able to take, read, observe, people who have observed cultures over the years and gone, oh, it's this is the silver bullet. And you're like, oh, we would miss so much if we focus on just this one thing. It's the whole picture in context, intact.
It's like a record scratch where
Well,
like,
and also it's like, I know, it's just like looking at Price's work and going, oh, decay is a food story. Yes, and that's not all.
we still have that culturally though, like in the West, that is still like a big,
Well, it's
it's
the idea that there can only be one answer.
Totally.
Yes.
That's it. I mean, it's just like, oh, well, there can only be one response. It's like going to Sunday school and the only answer is Jesus. It's like, that's what it's like. It's like there can only be one answer to this. And that's just not true. I mean, I've worked with families who have had stellar diets and stellar nutrition and occlusal molar decay
Caps
for the kids
on their teeth.
and my own children were the preacher's kids of dentistry. I mean, they had like baby root canals and things like that. But what was so interesting about that was I think I'd maybe had 2 cavities my whole lifetime, and then when I moved from my location
Wow.
on the Gulf.
to the Midwest, 13 buccal class 5s.
Wow.
13.
Wow.
And my kids were doing the same thing. And at the time, I was like, what the actual is going on? We are falling apart. And a lot of it was just being removed from that environment and what was familiar. And I didn't have the physical resources to be able to do life in another latitude. Didn't have it.
Wow.
And so the decay was just the symptom. And our diet was stellar. Our nutrition was on point. It had nothing to do with the food.
Totally.
It was really about just being unplugged from the life that we had and the place that I knew. Family had no support, zero support in a new location. So all of those things matter. And, you know, I feel like the nutrition, one answer nutrition to really any issue, whether it's fertility, decay, lip and tongue tie, craniofacial stuff, is only a small percentage of the whole picture.
Completely. Even my real life experience with this was COA right before we started working with you. We were still living in Florida. And when I look back with the perspective that I have now, I'm able to very clearly see all the energy leaks that were involved with our living situation there and our lifestyle at the time. Kyle was working like 12-hour days, rarely saw him. I was like, I'm basically, well, I kinda,
Yes.
I call it like single mom program, whatever. It's like I take on the belief system that I'm a single mom because my husband's gone all the time, when that's not at all true. It's just it's a perspective.
Sure.
And then actually believing that I don't have the support that I need. And how can you create the support you need versus taking that on as a belief system? So anyways, his teeth, not only had he fallen and chipped 2 teeth, but the enamel was softening. His teeth were literally wearing away right in front of my eyes. And I bought Cure Tooth Decay by, maybe you guys have heard of it if you're listening. I forget who actually wrote it, but very much took Nourishing traditions, Weston A. Price, and formulated a book to like, okay, this is how you reverse it. This is how you reverse tooth decay. And everything was probably even getting worse, actually. Then we moved and I started working with you, plugging up some energy leaks, getting my family online, getting my purpose online of who I am as a person. And his teeth hardened before my eyes and then even regrew a lot of the enamel that, I mean, it was almost
incredible.
like to the gums. Like he was losing so much of his baby teeth. And then they were able to grow down, and now he's starting to lose those first baby teeth now. So it's amazing to see the whole process when you look back of what I tried with nutrition. And then it was way more about the giant picture of my family ecology.
I think belief system here is so important too. And I tell people this all the time. And even when we were, had the lip and tongue tie clinic and we're seeing so many babies in a certain period of my life, I would tell people all the time, we're going to do this as a team. I don't care if we work with your witch doctor, your whatever doctor, we're going to do this together because I want you to stay in your belief system because that's the safest place for you to be right now. And if you come up on an edge against that and you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure if I believe this anymore, then we'll go to the next place. It's okay. You're still held because I can hold all of them for you. It's cool. And when you get to your edge and you need to try and experience something else, you have the permission to do that here with us. And it was such a relief for some people to be able to say, I have a judgment against chiropractors. Fine, don't use a chiropractor. We got 3 other people that you could choose from, or things about food or whatever, and just to be able to feel safe and have experiences is like the literal gold in just about everything. But I've seen it over and over again where some people will be like, well, that's decay. So their belief system is that they've got to take that child and have crowns done and all of this other stuff done because that's what their programming is. And you're exactly right. That's what you need to do. That's exactly what you need to do because that is your belief system, and it's the safest place for you to be is in that belief system. However, if there's a reason why you can't go through with it, then that's your clue that maybe that isn't your belief system, and maybe you want to have a different conversation about something, and maybe there's something there for you to learn and explore where how can you create some safety around that and then begin to have that experience.
And maybe you need foundational resources to help you get multiple options.
Right.
What's next?
Right. Because there's never just one choice. Ever just one choice. Yeah.
The biggest picture.
The biggest picture. And that also, not just decay, but applies to tooth rotation and movement too. We're going to talk more about the cranial piece in part 2, about this gains and drains and capacity, right? Because that's actually what's happening there. And then some of the cellular presentations around the midline, like what's actually happening on a signaling level around how that tissue develops, the information that it holds for you, which is abundant. And I think if we can just wrap up with a little bit of a functional feeding thing related to infant nutrition, rolling into the toddler years, that might be really, really good too. I breastfed all of mine, and you guys have too. And I took mine from the breast to the table. It took me only one time of pulling, Gerber baby food squash out of my hair, and I was like,
Hell no.
that fits, we're done. We're going to, and then it was,
In the hair.
it was
yeah.
And then straight to the table, and everybody went to the table after that. But Molly, like your experience watching Kua sprout teeth,
Yeah.
and then the way that you guys also operate in a nutritional way is similar to Kori's, Kori's way. What do you notice? What do you see?
Yeah, my experience was, it has been, I want to say easeful. I don't want to say easy, but like easeful with staying in my center and staying in the intuition and staying out of information. And his experience, he's still primarily breastfeeding after like 14 months or 15 months now. But him coming to the table, really what he was wanting to do was chew on like steak bones for the most part, for the very beginning pieces. And I didn't do a lot of, like some of the baby-led weaning things, just like cutting things in strips. But I have a really, I feel like a very balanced perspective of like soft foods versus hard foods that they have to chew, and just kind of keeping it intuitive in what we eat.
Yeah.
Like literally nothing extra.
Nothing special.
Nothing's being made for my child, which
Right.
I really feel that is in resonance with me and Sam, our energy, our capacity, how we want to create our family moving forward, how we want to be together. So a lot of those energetics were put into our intention, bringing him to the table. And it was really easeful. It's been really easeful. He likes like the bloody meat, and he likes rice, and we're all good with it. What he's choosing. I put all the things on his table or on his plate that we're eating, and he gets to choose.
Totally.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I've had 2 experiences now, which have been so fun to see how I showed up as a mom with Koa starting to eat solid foods, maybe a little bit more like I mush it up. And I probably did make specific things for him back then, in which case Story came along, and it very much was a representation of everything that you just said with whatever we're preparing. Even when she was an infant and was starting to experiment, I will say her first food was liver pate and raw egg yolks. And she's just been an absolute eater ever since. And I think energetically, starting with what we eat is what you eat, and her being a part of the process has seeded that a lot. But yeah, she's my foodie girl. She's my foodie girl for sure.
She's teaching my son how to be a foodie. And we're at the beach going around and grazing the bags and getting all the snacks. That's really cute.
I love that.
Yep.
Do you have anything else that's coming up for you that you want to begin to close with?
Yeah, I think just an objective lens on maybe if you've come from a place where nutrition has been like a really laser focus for you, or, we talk about this example a lot with the whole, maybe you're a breastfeeding mom, your baby's having digestive issues, and the first gut instinct is to cut out 5, 10, 15 foods, or maybe somebody's made a recommendation and it has aligned with your belief system to restrict or cut out and really nail the diet in to be able to have the outcome that you want. being curious about the fact that I guess the reduction and the restriction would be present in your energetic field as a whole, and how can we create curiosity to bring more into our bodies, into our conscious awareness? How can we add resourcing? How can we create energy in our lives? How can we maintain energy in our lives? Be able to resource ourselves and bring vitality online is really the goal. And so I think going back to Weston A. Price's work, and then crossing over into Ray Peat, bringing energy in as that center point and kind of shifting our perspectives to what might create that in abundance in our lives would be a great place to start if you're listening. And do you have anything else to add to that as a concluding thought?
Yeah, I would just say that, from an energy perspective, the resourcing of the foundational building blocks for muscle, bone, blood, all of that is super important, especially in growing children, developing the craniofacial space, because it's the energetic system that creates the potential for space, right? And the low energy, low vitality mapping in children related to nutrition is definitely a thing. There's no doubt about it. And to try to go in and overhaul your nutrition without context of who you are and where you are and your lineage and all of those things is no silver bullet. There's a dance that goes along with that. And that's what I'd invite everyone to explore, is that to use it as the tool that it is and put it in its place within the context of your ecology. That's the big picture for the nutritional piece as the building block, because you can have stellar nutrition and still have craniofacial issues, decay, things like that. It's not the only piece.
Totally. And being able to see things, in context of your field as a family. Nothing is outside of you or out of reach. It's all right here and reflecting back. I know we talked about mirroring on the mirroring episode. And simplified, that just means that what your children show you is in context of your ecology, and the awareness to start to see those pieces, the foundational pieces, and then those big picture pieces. It's there for you. So, yeah.
Okay, stay tuned for part 2.
Sounds good.